Hi, I am Sasha Rosenbaum. I'm a co-founder of a startup called Ergonautic, which roughly means navigating work. And today I'm going to be talking about SLO Prompt Engineering, aligning humans for better outcomes. So this talk is not about generating prompts for AI. This talk is about generating prompts for humans. So first, I want to start with introducing you to this awesome person. So this is BJ Fogg, and he developed a lot of theories on persuasive technology. And he actually published a book on persuasive technology and taught a Stanford class that was attended by a lot of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, such as founders of Instagram, that was designed around basically tricking humans into staying on social media longer, clicking buttons, and doing such things. So while you could blame him for your social media addiction, today I'm going to be talking about a different book that he's recently published, and that is Tiny Habits, the small changes that change everything. So this book presents a behavioral model that is about how you get anyone, including yourself or your kid or your significant other or your organization, to implement and stick with new behaviors. So the book has a handy acronym, which is B equals MAP. So it means behavior happens when motivation and ability and prompt converge at the same moment. So one of the interesting things here is that usually when we think about motivating someone to do behavior, we think with motivation first, right? So all the carrots and sticks analogies, right? Rewarding people for good behavior or punishing people for bad behavior. It all revolves around our assumption that motivation is the most important thing to trigger behavior. But actually, the model proves that all three things need to align, and actually, the best way to debug behavior is in the opposite direction. So if we thought about it as a chart, and the action line is the line on the chart, right? And the two axes are motivation and ability. So if you have very, very high motivation to execute on a behavior, you're going to do it whether it's hard or not, right? So if you're trying to save your child, you're going to climb any mountain because it's really important to you. However, if you only have limited motivation to execute on a behavior, then it really helps when your ability is very high, right? And as the harder it gets, the harder, like the less likely you are to execute on a behavior. Now, prompts happen all the time. They can happen below or above the action line, but below the action line, they will fail, whereas above the action line, they will succeed. And also the quality of prompts matters. So some prompts may succeed better than others. So when you're debugging motivation, when you're debugging behavior, you should start with the prompt. So say you ask your significant other to pick up a loaf of bread on their way from work and they forgot, right? So usually what we go to is, oh my God, you didn't care about me asking you this. This is why you didn't pick up the bread. But usually we are better off thinking about the prompt. So let's say your significant other drives home from work every time on the same route and doesn't stop anywhere. So the normal behavior for them is to just proceed with their journey. So they likely didn't have a trigger, right? So instead, you can start with asking, hey, did you set up a reminder roughly at the time you're supposed to be driving to pick up the loaf of bread? And that is much more likely to succeed than appealing to their motivation. And the other thing that's important here is we can debug the ability. So if something is hard and you're failing to do it, increase your ability to actually execute on a behavior. So that's all the tricks that we've heard about that are like lay out your workout clothes next to your bed before you go to sleep and stuff like that. They're all intended to make it easier for you to execute on a behavior. And then when it comes to motivation, the behavioral model actually says that it's very hard to motivate people to do something they don't want to do. So the key to lasting change is to help people do what they already want to do and help people feel successful about it. So if you find the existing motivation, say someone wants to be healthy or someone who cares about the environment, it's a lot easier to plug into that than try to convince them to execute behavior that doesn't align with their values, right? And then the other thing that's very important is celebration. So we actually tend to dismiss small changes, right? We tend to say, okay, I will celebrate when I accomplish the major goal. But day-to-day behaviors are really small successes. And so if we forget to celebrate small successes, then we will never get to the bigger goal because it will be hard to stick with the change. And this works the same for your dog and your kid and yourself and your big organization, right? The more we celebrate tiny successes, the more likely we are to stick with the change and expand the behavior and be successful at a big major change. So how does this relate to SLOs? Well, if you look at materials on SLO DLC or the Google SRE book or anywhere else where people are talking about implementing SLOs, the part that's hard about it is not technical, right? It's about socio-technical system. It's about convincing humans that they actually should care about the SLOs and then they should implement changes that will help them make it succeed, right? So part of it is convincing your organization that it should care about the SLO. So to me, SRE is actually about explicit agreements that align incentives between different teams, right? And this is kind of, we've been talking about DevOps for over 10 years, and DevOps had all the same ideas, but what SRE brought in is those metrics that we can rely on to create these explicit agreements to align the incentives to make everybody work together, right? So not just conversation about how we're all aligned on the same goal, but actually putting it into numbers. So SLOs are about explicitly aligning incentives between multiple different teams. So first of all, business, right? So business has to approve that your SLO is going to be 4 nines or 3 nines and not say 100%. Then there's product and development who are usually pushing for new features, right, as opposed to reliability. And here you have to remember that reliability is a feature. And then operations, obviously, right? So SLO is, and I'm not going to define SLO because I presume that a lot of people at this conference already know, or a lot of talks already defining SLO. But SLO to me is business approved reliability. So you've had these conversations with business and you agreed that you're not pursuing 100%, that you're, say, pursuing 4 nines of reliability. Right? So this means that you have some inherent unreliability that you're allowed to have in your applications. So error budgets is the acceptable level of unreliability. So let's define it as 1 minus SLO or 100% minus the SLO. So if we are talking about 4 nines, it's 0.1%, which equals, say, 13 minutes a quarter to express it. Okay, so let's say you're experiencing some incidents and you're experiencing some minor downtime and you're reaching that limit of 13 minutes a quarter of unavailability or unreliability, however your metrics are defined. What happens when you blow that error budget? And here's a problem that I see a lot in organizations is nothing happens. Even organizations that actually have SLOs, that actually gone through the work to define SLOs and error budgets, nothing actually happens when error budget is exceeded. And so it makes for a very unhappy operations team. So in ideal world, if you look at the Google SRE and the chapter on embracing risks, when the error budget is drained, developers and products should shift focus from delivering new features to improving reliability, right? So this is very, very important because if developers and product continue to push for new features and they don't care about the SLO, then you're not actually like the operations team or SRE team is now the only team that cares about reliability, and they can't really accomplish much if no one's listening to them. But from experience, this could feel like trying to stop a moving train, right? Trying to explain to product that they need to pause on their feature development and deployment. So how do we make this happen? So we're going to bring back the B equals map. So let's use the behavior model that's been proven, right, to try to design an organizational behavior change around this. So let's say you define your SLO and your error budget, which is already a lot of work. Then let's say you have a good monitoring tool that actually, tracks your error budget, and so you can have an objective measure of that. So next step would be to have an error budget, say, being half drained. Would probably not don't want to go to the all the way drained, but say half drained as a trigger for taking action. So that's your prompt, right? Now, you know your organization best, you can brainstorm which action makes sense. To me, an action that makes sense is just getting everybody into the same room, because that usually tends to produce great conversation. So to me, this plugs into increasing ability. So when you bring product development and operations into the same room to discuss the air budget and SLO and to discuss how reliability can be improved, you can generate a lot of good conversations. First of all, you hopefully come with your monitoring data and you say, okay, this particular feature is causing a lot of errors, is causing a lot of downtime. The development product might not even know that that particular feature is a culprit, and they might have great ideas about how to quickly fix that, right? Or just being in the same room, talking about it, generates a lot of ideas about how to improve the situation that can be actually put into the product roadmap potentially without impacting time significantly. And then lean into existing motivation, right? So like we talked about, changing motivation is difficult. So if you just talk to product about reliability, they might not feel like they care. But product and development always care about building good products, about ensuring customer satisfaction, about having great customer experience. Now, reliability is defined as the ability of your customer to actually accomplish the thing they want to do with your application, right? So meeting customer expectations is key to reliability. And so it's not necessarily impossible to have a good customer experience without high reliability. So when you lean into that and lean into existing motivation of product management to deliver amazing products to their customers, that's a lot easier to get them to prioritize reliability fixes as opposed to new features. And then remember to celebrate your successes. So celebrate any small success. If your fix had improved reliability by a small measure, send everybody an email about it. Celebrate whoever contributed to the effort. Make sure that everybody knows that you're making progress, right? Don't wait for your situation to improve drastically. Celebrate the small successes. So I'm finished with use your behavioral model to map your SLO, right? Start with the prompt and then increase the ability, then lean into motivation that people have. And of course, remember to celebrate successes and give people some endorphins when they do the good thing. So for resources used in this talk, there's of course the Tiny Habits book. There is the chapter on embracing risks on the SRE book by Google. Please look into that. And then for some TLDRs, there's a blog from me on the hacking habits and from Ergonautic on social engineering SLOs that can help you get started with these topics. And there's a lot of good material on the SLO DLC handbook. So thank you all so much for being here. And I hope we get to continue this conversation in person. Thanks and bye.